noise!
Hello and welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm, brought to you by funkinstuff.net. This is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I'm your host, Scott Dr. Jigs Goldfine, musicologist and author of Everything's on the One, the First Guide to Funk. If you don't have your copy, get on over to Amazon and pick one up. You'll be so glad you did. Whether you're watching the video version of this at funkinstuff.net or on YouTube, or listening to the audio-only podcast version from providers like iTunes and Spotify, as always, I thank you so much for your continued interest and support in the show. Speaking of which, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the Funk and Stuff channel on YouTube. That's where Truth and Rhythm lives. All kinds of goodies. You'll get early premieres, and it's all free, so make sure you sign up. Tell a friend, tell family. Also, get your official Truth and Rhythm and Funk and Stuff gear at the funkinstuff.net store. Cool stuff like I'm wearing right here. Truth and Rhythm shirts. Show your support and love of the show and also the musicians and the music that they represent. Also want to give a shout out to the Funk Exhibition Center and Hall of Fame in Dayton, Ohio, of which I'm very proud to be an official funk ambassador. Go to thefunkcenter.org to learn more and keep the funk alive. And now, with all that, it's time to get on with the show. Enjoy. I'm pleased to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Mothership drummer, composer, and producer Wardell Potts, whose credits include 3 number 1 and many more top 10 hits. As one of the Solar label's core musicians, he provided beats for some of R&B's most memorable acts, including Dynasty, Shalimar, and The Whispers. Other artists he has worked with include Leon Sylvers, Evelyn Champagne King, who is just on this show, Gladys Knight, Regina, Belle, Jerry Knight, Tavaras, the Jets, 5-Star, Atlantic Starr, who's on an upcoming Truth and Rhythm, Brothers Johnson, Tyler Collins, Tracy Spencer, and Hugh Masekela. Those are some bona fide credentials, I gotta say. Wardell, how are you? Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. It's always something else to hear when someone's, because I forget, you forget like who you work with and stuff. And so, but one person you didn't say that's from my hometown is Will Smith. So let's get Will in there because that's my homeboy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sure there's probably a few that I missed for sure.
Oh, yeah, but it's all good, man. It's all good. But you got to think about Will all the time. How's it going, brother?
Good enough. I'm doing well. So glad to see that you're apparently healthy and getting through this crazy year we're all having.
Oh, man, it is something else. And yes, I live kind of in a rural area. I live on a ranch. So it's very easy to do social distancing here. And so it's, but at the same time, I love the privacy, but this is too much. It's been going on for too long, and I really miss, hanging out with people and, and loving on people that, I love because I love to love. And, but it's okay. I know we need to get through this, and we will as long as we all are, doing what we're supposed to do.
Yeah. I think even hermits have had enough at this point of what's going on.
Right.
But so you're coming to us from Texas, correct?
Yes, sir.
And is that where are you from originally, and how long have you been in Texas? And
well, I'm originally from Philadelphia, PA, and I left Philadelphia in 1979 to go to California to audition for Dynasty with Leon Sylvers, and I made that audition, and I lived in California for 40 years. And then my wife, she retired. She's a autism specialist. She's a doctor, and she was retiring, and she wanted to come home. And I said, home? Oh, excuse me. I said, home? Where? Home is where? Texas? And she said, yeah. I said, oh, they have guns in Texas. And so, it was just a joke. And so now, we've been here for 3 years, and I love it. I love the people. The people in Texas are amazing.
Well, that's good.
I'm very blessed.
That's good to hear.
Yes.
What first attracted you to drumming, and how old were you about when you got started?
Well, so as a child, the thing that got my attention was the Jackson 5 on TV one night, and the cymbals were just glittering. It just caught my attention. I kept on watching the drums, and it's like this. It was just like this. It looked like a rocket ship or so. I don't know. It was just so. I was taken by the drums. I enjoyed Michael Jackson and the Jackson 5 as well. I thought it was great, and I was like, there's something about the drums. And so when I went down south, my grandfather was a pastor, and so in his church they had drums in there, and so, but you only played one drum. You either played the snare drum or the kick drum, and so my grandfather let me play the kick drum a couple times, and then after a while he let me graduate, or I graduated to the snare, and got to play the snare. And then my cousin Jay Jr. is his name, Jasper Daniels Jr., who is now a pastor himself, got me into a group with him, and I started playing the Jackson 5 music, and so that's how I got started in playing drums.
That brings back memories for me. Jackson 5, when I was in grade school, on Fridays the kids could bring in their records for dancing, and it was just so much about the Jackson 5 at that time.
It was little kids. Everybody else was like grown, and then these little kids with the big afro, and they made it look like fun, right?
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
Yeah.
I can, now you can see yourself there. It's like, wow, if they could do it, I could do it too.
So when did you first get, like a full kit and really get immersed?
Well, so my dad's a businessman on top of being a pastor himself, and so he said he knew that I wanted a drum set because I was in his store, working in his store for him, and so he had two stores. He had the auto store here, and then on the same street he had a hardware store. So he had me running the hardware store, not running it, but working there. I don't know why I said running it, but I was working in the hardware store, and they noticed that I was constantly beating on paint cans. I set up paint cans as my drum set, and I would practice until a customer came in and on the paint cans. And so my father asked me what did I want for my birthday, and I said I want a drum set. And so he said, okay, so what I want you to do is you save up half the money, and then I'll take you to get the drum set. And I said, okay, that half the money. I didn't know how much drums cost until he took me to the store, and I was like, whoa. But so I saved $100, and he says, okay, let's go. He was proud that I saved $100, and so then we went downtown in Philadelphia, went to a music store, and I picked out the set that I liked, which was a Pearl set, and he said, okay. And so he had to pay the other $500.
Wow.
So he paid for my Pearl set, and I was excited and took it home down in the basement and started playing away.
That's a pretty good way to start. You hear all the stories about getting the Sears set, and that kind of stuff. So,
yeah,
Yeah.
I was really blessed. My dad really blessed me with that.
And so I'm imagining, by the time you got in high school, you were in some bands or things like that. Or what kind of music was inspiring you, and what kind of players were inspiring you?
Well, for me, I started off playing Latin jazz and progressive jazz, and I don't know how that happened. Well, I do kind of know. Stanley Clarke was a big deal in Philadelphia. That's because that's where he was from. And when his stuff was taken off with Return to Forever, Chick Corea, and Lenny White, and Al D'Ameliola, Lenny White was the drummer for that band. And so my friend and I, Ruben Edwards and I, Ruben is a bass player still, and at the time, just in the basement trying to learn that stuff. And the funniest thing is that, I mean, we did that for a few years, just playing this real deep, heavy jazz, because I just wanted to be the best drummer in the world. I wanted to be the best jazz drummer in Philadelphia. That was my goal. And but I couldn't understand, like, why all the other kids and the bands and everybody else didn't listen to that kind of music. They would listen to R&B and stuff like that. And I just, so it kind of, I got curious, and I was like, and I told my buddy, I said, listen, Ruben, I want to figure out what's going on with this. I want to go, and he was not happy that I wanted. He considered I was a sellout because I was going to, what everybody else is doing as opposed to sticking to the hard stuff. And I respect his feelings about that because he's still doing it, exactly that. But I wanted to explore, so then I ended up finding a band, and they let me be their drummer, and I learned how to play the drums and that kind of music. It was just but it was all about discipline, because being a jazz drummer, you're all over the place. You're just filling it up, right? But being an R&B drummer, you're driving the train, and your responsibility is to hold the pocket, hold the groove, so everybody else can groove with you. And so it was a learning experience, and I loved it. And so that's how I became an R&B. That's how I got involved in R&B.
So were you mostly playing, the radio hits of that era, or any original material before, you went out to California, or?
Yes, so I did. I played, I was just on the phone with Gregory Williams from Switch, and I was playing their stuff, and I was like, just the music was, they had a real nice swing to their ballads. I was like, this is good. And you could see that people were very receptive, because the stuff that I was playing, the jazz stuff, they were like, but this music, the R&B music, the pop R&B music, people were like, yeah, now we're talking. And so I really got into pleasing people through music that way. And so then I went away to college, and Norfolk State in the city of Virginia, and Virginia and Norfolk. And so as I was on spring break, I got a phone call from Tony Westcott, he passed away, a real close friend of mine, saying that Leon Sylvers, they called him. He was the drummer for the Sylvers, and he said Leon Sylvers called him and said that he had left the Sylvers and he was starting a group called Dynasty and wanted Tony to be the drummer. And Tony said, I told Leon that, I've been on the road much. I just want to, kind of be with my family now. So, but I told him about you. So would you still be interested in going out and audition? I was like, yes, I would love to. And so he said, well, here's his number. And so I called him, and Leon said, okay, well, come on out and let's do it. So I didn't have any money. So, I mean, I told my parents I was going, but I needed to take my drums. So instead of getting a plane, I got on a bus, a Greyhound bus. My cousin took me to the airport, and he gave me $300. He was only a couple of years older than me. He was like my dad. He was like doing like what something my parent would do. He says, here, I believe you, and I just want you to have money so you'll be okay. And I was like, whoa, dang, that's really nice of you. I was like 20, and he was about 23. So, but anyway, no, he was 22. So then I, took a couple of days. I don't know how many days it took me to get there. I got there, and Leon Sylvers came to the station. Then we went back to his house, and it was just like all these big afros that the Sylvers had, right?
In Palos Verdes? The house?
Oh, yeah, they lived in Palos Verdes.
Yeah.
Yes, but Leon Sylvers, he and Nidra lived in L.A. They lived in Los Angeles. Nidra was his wife-to-be. She was in Dynasty, and so they were just, engaged at that point. And so I stayed with them, and then immediately their place was a little too small, their apartment, so I ended up living with Kevin Spencer, the lead singer of Dynasty. and staying there. And they were like, "Yeah, you can stay." And I stayed. I had my own room, my own bathroom. I was like, "Oh, I have an apartment back here," so it was great.
What what did
That's how it
what
started.
did the audition consist of? Do you remember?
That was the strangest thing. He asked me, to play this. I was at that's now when we auditioned. That I went to Palos Verdes to the Sylvers house, and so and they had the drums and stuff set up in there. And so I went and I got on drums. And so he said, "I want you. Can you do this?" And I did that. They said, "Can you do this?" I did that, and so then he says, "You just play along with me." So he played, and I played drums along with him, and we grooved a little bit. And so then he said, "Okay, all right, let's get out of here. It's all good." I said, "Okay." And so then he never said if I made the interview, and so I called him about a week or so later because I was living now with Kevin Spencer, and I was like, "Hey, Leon, listen, I don't know what happened. I don't know if I made the group or not, but if I did, because you never told me." He said, "Oh yeah, you made it." I said, "I did." "Oh, okay. I just you never told me." He said, "Yeah, no, that's fine."
Minor
I
detail.
said, "Okay, so right." I said, "So well, whenever you guys get ready, let me know because I'm gonna go back to Philly and stuff and such. And so you get ready, I'll come back." And he said, "No, I need you to stay here because we're going to go in the studio and record stuff for the Whispers and Shalimar and some other stuff." I say, "Oh, okay." And so that's when we got started, really got started. And the first song I recorded was the second time around for Shalimar.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's something else. When
yeah.
you found out you got the gig, were you more excited or kind of intimidated, or you know?
I can't remember my emotion at that point, but I think I was excited because I didn't want to be I didn't want to because so many people were rooting for me back in Philly. I didn't want to go back and say I didn't make the audition. So I probably was excited. Um, but then when he said we're going to record, I had to like focus on okay what we're about to do, and I was struggling financially because I was working for my dad in Philadelphia. When I came there, I wasn't doing anything, so I'm thinking, I need some money, So finally we started recording and started making money.
About how much time, Wardell, would you say transpired from when you knew you had the job to doing that recording?
That about 2 weeks. Yeah, about two. I mean, maybe a little longer, about a month. Yeah,
Yeah. So at that
yeah,
point, I'm thinking Leon was probably already just constantly busy with solar projects and things, and he probably was juggling so many things that maybe even just telling you that you got the gig was sort of like an afterthought.
right. Yeah, he definitely was busy because he was doing this stuff, and he was doing a thing called the numbers on the drums. So before he had a drummer, which is me, he was doing the drum parts himself and individually doing the kick drum and then the snare and the hi hat and cymbals and then tom tom overdubs. So he was constantly, and it was grueling just to I saw him doing that a few times. I was like, what is he doing? And then so eventually he gave the throne over to me. But it took him a minute to release his throne. He was used to doing it. It was just got to get it done.
What was it like for you being in a studio? Had you ever been in a studio prior to that?
Nope, that was it. That was the first time, and it was Studio Masters in Beverly Hills on Beverly Boulevard, owned by John Woods and Larry Wood, and it was a beautiful studio, and we recorded so many hits out of that studio. And so I thought it was "And the Beat Goes On" was the first song, but it was not. Second time around, Leon reminded me that second time around we did that, and then while we were in the studio recording second time around, that's when Steve Shockley was playing this thing. It was an exercise, and Leon heard that. He said, "What's that?" He said, "Exercise." He said, "And keep playing that." And then that's when And the Beat Goes On was created. Steve Shockley is a guitar player and the leader of Lakeside.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was always in the studio with us playing guitar until Pepper Reed started playing with us, and Richard Randolph.
And were you already a fan and aware of these acts that already had careers started, like a Lakeside?
I wasn't fully aware of Lakeside, but I did go see times, and I was like, wow, they're really good, But I wasn't fully aware. I knew about that hit at that time was "It's All the Way Live," and when they played that, I was like, woo, I'm a fan, But I didn't know about them before. I didn't know really about Shalimar either, but I did know about the Whispers because the Whispers were out when I was little. And so this was like a rebirth of their career. Leon really took them to that place that they'd never been, and I got the chance to play drums on that very first song, their first platinum out record, and that was "And the Beat Goes On," and so that was the second song I recorded, so it was a blessing.
Yeah. Wow. So you talk about hitting the ground running. That was so that's 1980. Is that correct?
Yes, 79, 80.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
And the Beat Goes On and second time around 79. I'm not sure which one came. I think second time around came out first, and then And the Beat Goes On came out second. But I'm not sure what the dates were that they were released.
A lot of those solar acts were just really ramping up right at the end of the 70s and into the 80s. So, I mean, the Midnight Stars and the Lakesides and the Shalimar, and then Dynasty was starting to form with you coming in. And
yes.
Yeah. So what was it like being in the studio with like Leon? What was his approach like?
Leon was focused like that. I mean, he had a lot going on. He had a lot of responsibility. Dick Griffey, made him the house producer, so he had to deliver the goods. And so, Leon formed Dynasty to help him with the recordings as well on the other acts. And so it wasn't all on him. It still was all on him ultimately, but he was the one. He had all these us there to actually be like seasons in the kitchen, and so he was just able to use us as needed in the way that he needed to. So, but it was very focused. He taught me what pitch, pocket, and attitude was. Those were the three main principles in the studio with him: pitch, pocket, and attitude. And so no matter what it is, no matter what instrument you're playing, and so it was, pocket was the main thing for me being the drummer. I had to lock that pocket, and I had no idea what pocket was. I was like, okay, okay, and then eventually I found the pocket when we did a song called by the Whispers called "Love and I Can Make It Better." Make it better. We can make it better. Something like that. And I can make it better for you. That song that you stick to me and I'll show you, baby, love. I can make it better for you. Anyway, so that song right there was the song that I discovered. That's what he's talking about. That is it. Locking my kick drum to his bass lines. I was locking it. And like prior to that was "And the Beat Goes On." Mm-hmm. So then he would say, "Pocket, you guys need pocket." We go in there and we recorded. It was a Sunday morning, and we were recording. He was not satisfied, and we had to take a break at around 1:00, and then we took a break for lunches, and we came back, and we went in there, and then we nailed it. But I was feeling bad because I thought it was my fault, because he said we can't get this done. We got to make sure we get the drums first. So as long as I was recording, that means the drums weren't good enough. And so finally, he was like, "There you go, drums are good." And so then he started fixing his part, the bass part, then he fixed the guitar part and the keyboard parts. And so that's how that song came.
Wow.
So he was very, yes,
Wow.
laser focused.
Yeah, it sounds like a bit of a mentor, really, to you in that way.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think we all felt that way in regards to Leon. He really led us where we were not knowing where we were going. We were just doing what we thought we needed to do to have a job, and later on we realized, wow, this is bigger than just a job. We're creating a legacy here, and and it was just a beautiful thing. It was like a school because no one was jealous of each other. We all were loving on each other, in the different groups like Lakeside and Midnight Star and Climax, and they all come around and we're in the same studio doing all the stuff together for Dick Griffey, and it was just a beautiful place to be.
Yeah, I heard the vibe was great there. I mean, I've had Cheryl and Coolion and so many people that were there. Reggie from Midnight Star and goes on, and people just seem to love the family vibe and the whole camaraderie that was going on back then there.
Yes, it was definitely that, and it still is. We just had celebrated 40th anniversary. Dick Griffey was Solar was awarded 40-year anniversary celebration from the city of Los Angeles, and so that was like a giant family reunion. We all got together, and it was beautiful, man. It's like yes, wonderful seeing each other. It was it's great.
Did you get to spend much time with Dick Griffey outside of business at all? I mean, what was he like as both a business guy and if you saw him outside of that as just a man?
So my relationship with him was mainly business. And so there was not really, the only time he was fun is when he came to concerts, to our concerts when we had the Solar Galaxy of Starr tour, and he would be on the side of the stage, and you could see he's happy. His bands are out there, and this whole thing, it's like, whoa, it's really happening, and it was just beautiful. And so he was in a really good mood. But I was a young man, so he was like, I was nervous around him, and I was like, I'm my job. So always was very respectful. Didn't never have like that sit down and have lunch and have a burger kind of relationship with him. That wasn't it for me. But I only wish, because I never knew that he was a drummer. I didn't know that until just a few years ago when I heard Carrie Lucas, his wife, talk about him, and she mentioned he was a drummer. I was like, what? He was a drummer. And so I talked to Virgil Roberts about it, and I said, Virgil, I didn't know Dick was a drummer. And he's like, yes. And I said, that means so much to me, him being a drummer, and he chose me to be his drummer for his company. And Virgil said, that's big, Wardell. That's big, because me as an attorney, if I'm in a situation, whoever I hire, I know they know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, yeah. But Leon Sylvers is the one that brought me into the situation, and Dick Griffey was the one to confirm that he wanted me to play on the records. So, and I just, wow, that's beautiful.
And what was Kevin like in those days? As a talent, as a player, and as a friend.
Well, Kevin was my brother. We lived together, remember?
Yeah.
So we were like brothers, and Kevin's very, very smart. I mean, he's really smart. His writing skills, in terms of just he could write anything, and it's really deep and heavy. And so he's a fun, crazy kind of guy. We go play basketball and stuff and hang out and and all that kind of stuff. But when it came down to writing, he really enjoyed doing the music and being a part of it and watching this thing happen. That was really good for him. And but he was really smart. Really, I mean, he's still like I have him write stuff for me. Can you write? He's really really smart. So that's Kevin, the
Yeah.
whiz kid.
Well, I'm sure he was able to show you around Los Angeles, since you were new and all that.
Yeah, but it was more. I hung out more with William Shelby, Ricky, and Richard. And so I just kind of, I don't know. Well, William Shelby and I were closer because we both were from back east initially. We were really close. But then when we went on the road, Ricky Smith and I were roommates. And so then we became like brothers for real. And then everybody else in the group, we were always together, either on the road or in the studio recording somebody. So it was, or at rehearsal. And we would rehearse, 8-hour days. So we were always together.
Were you prepared stamina-wise for that kind of regimen, coming into it, or did you kind of have to build up your endurance? Because it's no joke being behind the kit, for hours and hours.
Yeah, so I think that my natural, who I was back then naturally, had prepared me for it because I was an athlete. So I ran track, and and I did gymnastics, and so I was used to whatever it is that I'm doing. There's a lot of practice involved, and so, but drums is something that I loved. It wasn't just something I was doing; it was something I loved, and so that never made me tired. I would track all day and all night. It was just fun.
I don't know that you mentioned. First, one point I wanted to make was, when you mentioned about all the way live Lakeside, I was thinking that you probably really liked that once you heard it because of it had that Latin thing at the end, and you mentioned the Latin rhythms before. So
yeah, I really loved it, and I loved the beginning, the intro too. And I talked to Fred Lewis about it. I was like, Fred, like, what were you thinking? That's that
stutter, yeah.
And he was like, Wardell, that was just something that I was practicing. It was an exercise, another one of those exercises. And then Steve heard it and said, hey, that we need to use that as an intro for a song. And that's how that became the intro for It's All the Way Live. But I loved that. You don't know how many times I wanted to just move over for a minute, friend. Let me play with Steve on this part. Because it gets to me. I wish that we had a song that had that in it. Because, yeah, love the Latin part of that.
Yeah, there aren't too many songs that funk as hard as that one does and then go off as much as it does into that Latin direction.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful release. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Keep on Loving Me. We were talking about that. Of course, you were there for that, and that's my favorite Whispers track in terms of groove, for sure. What was it like laying that down? And I think you had told me about some controversy around which version and that kind of thing.
Okay, so Keep on Loving Me is a song that I wrote, and I played every instrument on it except for the think. Leon's playing the Rickenbacker bass, and he's up as high as possible.
Wow!
And he's playing that part, and I'm just thinking, I wonder if he was doing that, like for Pepper Reed, the guitar player for Dynasty, or Steve Shockey, to just putting it down as an idea for them to come in and play that part. But I think what happened is that it sounded so good, it was like, I don't need anybody to replace it. Because he was producing it. It was my song, but Leon was producing it. And so, so we did that, recorded that song, and it was wonderful. I got the chance to play all the parts. That's the first time. And then I had to call Leon because I had a person, a listener that wanted to know who came up with that part. Hey, Scotty, what's that mean? And I was like, I don't know. That's a good question. So I called Leon. Leon, who came up with that part? Hey, Scotty, what's that mean? And he says, I did. I said, you did it? He said, yeah. He said, when I initially did it, Scotty was like, they didn't want to have anything to do with it. And then I go, well, I think it's kind of cool thing because it got you scat. He did the scatting thing. He says, and so I think it's a good concept to just something to play with, little, and they were not feeling it. And so he says, okay, I tell you what, let's do it like this. Well, I'll make 2 different versions, 2 different mixes of it, and then whichever one Dick wants, that's the one we'll go with. And they agreed to that. Well, obviously Dick went with the same one Leon wanted, and down the sky, they love it. That is the thing, But sometimes we don't hear things. Like I didn't hear second time around. I didn't think that should be a single because we did so many other songs. I thought it'd be the second time around was the first thing. I was like, what? How could that be the first single? Because sometimes you just don't hear it because you're too close to it or whatever the case is. And you're not always going to know. Everybody's not. That's not. You don't know what people are going to like. You can assume, but you don't know for sure.
Yeah. So when that one became as big of a hit as it did, it must have been especially gratifying with you being so integral to that one.
Yeah. So the first time when it got on the record, I was like, "What? They made the Whispers album?" I was like, "Yes!" I was so happy. And then I remember we were at some place rehearsing, and there was mirrors everywhere. We were rehearsing, and then Leon said, he came in and he says, "Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you that's going to be the second single." I said, "What? They're going to release this thing?" And it was bigger than the first single. And then I was really excited. So just to actually have a song on a group that I grew up listening to was a really big thing. And I thought the Whispers was from Philadelphia because they played their stuff so much. I thought they were from Philadelphia. So I was like, hey, I got my homeboys. I'm from my homeboys. No, they're from L.A. But anyway, that's that.
Yeah, they were even more successful, I'm pretty sure, sales-wise in their second,
Yeah, time around.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No pun intended, but definitely, I believe, because they never had a gold or platinum record. So, and most of their songs before that were mid-tempos and ballads that were hits. So now, when Leon came and, and they signed up with Solar, because Dick was their manager, and then he signed them into Solar. We came with the fire, from And the Beat Goes On to It's a Love Thing, In the Raw. I mean, it was all those banging, emergency songs just coming at you like, whoa, what the, and so we just, that they needed that because it made the show a little more exciting and much, a much better situation for them.
Yeah.
Yes.
So on the road, did you play with any of the other acts from Solar aside from Dynasty?
Shalimar. Yes, Shalimar. And that was, I played percussion with Shalimar, and it was just really interesting to see Jeffrey Daniels do the moonwalk, or the backslide is what we called it before Michael Jackson got it and called it moonwalk. But, and I was like, is there something on the floor there that's allowing him to slide backwards like that? And so I got to see firsthand, there's nothing on the floor. He's actually moonwalking. I mean, doing that thing, it's just magical. Because I see him do it right in front of me, and I go, how is he doing that? I don't get it. But it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, sleight of foot. Did he do that in rehearsal, or did you see it for the first time when you were actually out there doing a show?
Oh, yeah, no, he couldn't help himself. He was doing it all the time.
Yeah. So
that's part of who he is.
So he might make you miss a beat or something, if you saw it for the first time while you're out there.
Well, I've always, it's it was just part of the music. Their moves became part of just this. It was just a show, and everybody's doing their part. And so the Whispers. This is the funny thing. They would be on the side of the stage, betting on how many times I'm going to jump without stopping. Betting on the side of the stage because I would jump because I was like a human metronome for the drummer. And I would jump while playing the whole time. Jump, I'm bouncing, just bouncing. And I didn't know that they were betting. I was like, you guys are betting. And so it was funny. But we had so much fun on the Solar Galaxy of Starr's tour. And I just want to tell you a little story about it. As we were touring around in our those little buses that we had, but they're beautiful because they were like the same color as your hat. They were purple, and then it was at the Solar Galaxy of Stars tour, and it was so beautiful to see that on the side of the bus. But they were like, we're traveling around the country and stuff, and they couldn't handle some of the places we were going. And one time my bus caught on fire. We had to jump out the bus and take the snow and throw it in there.
What year was that, Wardell?
81, 80 or 81.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, and it was, but we went around the whole country, and I think we had 4 buses, and it was great. Everybody, Dynasty, Lakeside, Shalimar, and the Whispers, and we just went around the country, and it was just great, and it was a wonderful opportunity. But our bus broke down, and we had to end up riding with Lakeside for a few months, and that was an experience that I didn't expect. Because you don't that's Lakeside. They're like our big brothers, right? I'm hanging out with these guys, and they were so kind, and they were talking to me about spirituality and being respectful to yourself. And I'm thinking, all these girls all over the place. They were like became our parents on the road, right? Like, oh, goodness gracious! But it was good, and still to this day, those guys. Some of those guys are still just like that. Very, very, religious. Always talking about God. And T. Meyer McCain and Otis Stokes were the main two that was always talking about God. And it really it was like you felt like I have big brothers right here with me, and I'm wondering if my parents prayed that up. So, but it just turned out really good for me. We enjoyed it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Yes.
If I mention some of these acts to you, Wardell, what comes to mind? Like, let's say Climax.
Bernadette Cooper. Being a drummer in Climax, my heart was always out to her because I knew that she was always trying to get that pocket and stuff, and I knew how I felt not to know what the heck Leon was talking about with the pocket. I ended up playing drums on a couple of their records, but she really worked so hard, and she got it, and then she started recording. But I remember my heart going out to her like, you can do it. And you could just see her sweating hard and just trying hard to get it, and she got it. And so I love Climax. They were our sisters, and they were good girls, and they were just trying to do what they needed to do to make things happen for them, and they did a good job at it.
What about Midnight Starr? I've heard, just really threw it down on stage. What can you tell us about them?
The problem with Midnight Starr is that they're still doing that. Nobody, it's like, hold on, we're not coming on after them because they are masters at the pocket. They are masters. They have a string of hits that you just keep. Boom, boom, boom. It's just dropping a bomb and it's feeling good. It's like, whoa. And we're talking about a good mixture of up-tempos and ballads. So their shows are just like, it's hard to compete with those guys. And And they're all very, very talented and very athletic. They worked out all the time. They lived in a house, and they all used to work out together.
The
The guy
Callaways,
that,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, all of them, and they were, I mean, including the girl, and they all worked out, and they went running, in the mornings and stuff, and that was part of the regiment. It was like they were in the service. Yeah, they awesome.
Yeah, they were all business and still are apparently. What about the Deal? Did you have any exposure with them?
Not as much. That was a group that Midnight Star was responsible for bringing them to Babyface and Evelyn and to Solar. So they were a band, from like I believe from Ohio that Midnight Star was working with, and there was I'm not sure which individual in the group was responsible for getting them signed, but there was somebody. It wasn't Reggie. It was someone else. But anyway, I just know that they weren't like there with the rest of the groups. They were they
Like
came
a
from afar. Yeah,
like a protege group for them.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Carrie Lucas, I heard from Kevin Spencer anyway that you had to kind of watch your step working with her because you want to make sure you did right by the boss and that kind of thing. Is that how it was?
Well, that's in any situation. The same thing with the pastor's wife, right? You gotta, you're gonna always be respectful, a little more than you would normally be, because you don't want to, make anybody feel uncomfortable. And so, for the most part, Carrie was and still is one of the sweetest people you could meet. I wrote a song called Show Me Where You Coming From" on her, and that was her single, and it's just a pleasure working with her. And to this day, I honor her as a beautiful woman and human being. She's a beautiful person, and she's been a blessing to me.